Welcome to another Fresh Perspectives episode. I'm here today with Ahava Smith-Bodner, who is a LMSW, originally practiced in the New York, New Jersey area and is now relocated to the Miami Beach area and is practicing there, works with a variety of different age groups and presenting challenges, both in clinical settings and in private practice. And thank you for making this time to have a conversation with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so jumping into the first prompt and question of what is something that you've been seeing in your practice that you think is an important and relevant mental health related issue in our community or societally at large.
So there's a lot of different topics that I thought about. One that kind of jumped out at me was the topic of divorce. And unfortunately, we see it so often today. I'm pretty sure right now from 2022, the percent is 41% of marriages end in divorce. So that's a pretty high percentage. I think in the frum community, it's probably a little bit lower, but it's a very important topic to kind of talk about and discuss and think about. So that's where I'm leaning.
Yeah, and that's something that, if I understand correctly, that's an area that you've specifically worked pretty extensively with.
Yes, yeah. I work with I have my own private practice, and many of my clients are referred from a divorce. Um, it's called Derech Shalom. So they help people who are going through divorces, and they refer clients to me. So many of my private clients are either going through divorce, children of divorce, or have been divorced and need to work through that.
So, in working with people who are either navigating through divorce or right afterwards, is there something that you're seeing kind of in a pattern that we might not have thought of or might not realize or think about?
Yeah, so something that's very interesting to me is I've had I've had several clients say something along the lines of, I feel like I didn't work hard enough, or I feel like I could have done more. And I feel that typically divorce is something that people turn to as like a last resort, right? Like, okay, we've done everything, we've done it all. So it's not working, let's get divorced. But some of these clients have told me, which I find so fascinating, that, either we didn't have the right resources, we weren't putting in the right energy into the right areas, like we were working on things that weren't connected to us or weren't connected to our marriage or making it work. And I think that that's so sad, because again, we do think of it as a last resort, but unfortunately, sometimes we think we're working on it, but we're not working on the proper problem. Or, we're in couples counseling, but we're not with the right counselor, we're not with the right therapist. And something that also is very important is finding someone that you vibe with, finding someone that you connect with. And I feel like sometimes therapy is so daunting that we take whoever we can get and we just push through it. But really finding someone that you connect with is something that's so important. Because again, you're like sharing a lot of personal things with this person. And if you want it to, I think, really work or really have like the most positive outcome, you need to make sure that you and your spouse, mesh with this person. So those are the things that I've noticed. And again, like, we live in a world where we're seeing so many other people, right? Like we're seeing on social media, all these different things. We're seeing movies, we're seeing what we think a relationship is supposed to look like. And unfortunately, that's not always reality. And everyone's different. Everyone has you know, a different set of what is reality for them. Um, and I think we sometimes get caught up in what other people are doing. And I think that's also a contributing factor. Like we see people on social media smiling with their family and everything looks great. And, my grandmother used to say this line, all that glitters is not gold. You see these like shiny people smiling in their Instagram posts and you think to yourself, oh, wow, like maybe I'm supposed to be like that. And what we don't always think about is, well, right after that picture, everyone was yelling at each other and like it was a whole balagan. It was like a mess. So there's all these different factors that go into making a relationship work. And I just think that, we now again, the percentage is 41% of marriages end in divorce, which is really high. So it has become somewhat accepted to, say, hey, this isn't working for us. And sometimes it's 100% necessary to separate from your partner, right? Like there are circumstances where that is what needs to happen. And then I think there are also situations where it could have been done differently, or it could have been helped in a different way. So that's kind of the point that I'm bringing home here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's not something that I would have known or thought of, that people afterwards are questioning if they had given it enough of a chance or done enough. I'm just curious, do you think that that's coming from a genuine healthy place of, maybe there was really something more I could have done, or is it more like after people make really big decisions, they often will just start to like second guess themselves and doubt, if they had done everything. And it's kind of like no matter
Right.
how much you do after that, you might look back and be like, well, I didn't do enough. But that's really coming from like a more of a self doubt. And maybe it's both in different
Yeah, I think
situations.
it's
I
a
don't
little
know.
bit of both. Like you said, it's kind of inevitable to feel that doubt. Um, but yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that with something so big like divorce, which again is unfortunately very common, you want to feel like you've done everything you can, and you want to feel like you've put in as much effort to the problem, to the issues that you're experiencing. And I do think a part of it is really just a lack of resources, a lack of knowing, hey, we can work through this with the right person, or hey, if I work on myself and if he works on himself, like I think that's kind of in some scenarios and in some cases my clients have expressed, if only I had the right help, not just help, but the right help. If only I
Hmm.
had the right resources that could have helped get me through this, maybe I'd be in a different place.
What are some of the resources that people might not readily know about?
Well, I think that even though therapy is so widely accepted, there are still people and communities that kind of look down upon it. So just the basic, like going to couples counseling, my mom is a therapist, my uncle's a therapist. Like these are all things that have been in my family. And even I was a little bit hesitant to go to couples therapy.
Hmm.
Not for any grand issues, but just, being married, you have things that you need to discuss sometimes. And I don't think
Sure.
that people feel comfortable with it or feel like it's like the norm, when a lot of times many, many people are doing that. Again, not connected to divorce, just generally like, hey, sharing your life with someone is kind of hard. Let's work through that. So I think that's like that's one of the main things. And I think that people wait too long.
Mm.
They don't at the first sign of a problem, you're not running to therapy, but if something is persistent and you feel like this is a trigger in your marriage and it continues to come up for you, it might be helpful to get help before you're at the point where you're ready to like pull your hair out, and where it's sometimes that's what happens. People come to me at a point where they're like just so unraveled and so frustrated with this person, and to backtrack it so far back is difficult. So if you come at a point when you're not as deep into the negative, it's a lot easier to work through it. So I think that's a big part, is going to therapy, but not just going to therapy and not just finding the right person, but going before you get to the point where you're ready to like just, lash out all the time.
Right. Yeah, that really resonates because so often so many of the couples I'm seeing, it's a situation where it's already escalated to such a degree, or it's already,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
people have already made decisions that were already so hurtful and have wounded the
Yeah.
relationship so deeply. And so now it's like we're not even working on how to build the healthy relationship that we want and how to navigate the original
Right.
problems and the original issues. Now we're trying to see, can we like even piece this thing back
Exactly.
together to then
Right.
even have the possibility of working on whatever it was that led to all of this mess.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's kind of like a twofold, like there's not just one thing that needs to be done, but a few things in a hopefully timely manner, and it's hard because when you're in it, you don't necessarily see hey, this is something that's gonna escalate, you know? So it's hard to kind of know that. Like personally, I went to couples therapy with my husband before we even got engaged. I was like, hey, that's extreme, right? Like I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, let's work through some of this stuff before we like commit our lives to each other. And then, you know, here and there we continue to go back, which has been really, you know, it's nice that we had that foundation. Like, hey, we can work through these triggers before they become so humongous, you know, and again, it doesn't take away all of our problems. We still we're still married and go through our things,
Sure.
but you know, it allows couples to have a space to open up and to feel safe sharing certain things. And like you said, before it gets to that point, it gives the opportunity to untangle before it's like, you know, unable to be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So shifting over to the second piece here, something that you see as a strength, something that's going well in our community from a mental health perspective, and how we can further encourage that.
Yeah, so um I think that our community is amazing at coming together. So for someone who does need to get divorced and who does need to separate, you know, of course there are situations like that where the person is, you know, needs to leave and needs to separate. Um, in those situations, I find that our community is, you know, I should say certain aspects of our community, certain groups within our community are very supportive and very good at helping the people. I think, you know, being able to make therapy more accepted and readily available is huge and really important and could be really helpful for people. Um, but I think that our community can, you know, does come together and does help people through some of these situations. I think acceptance is really important, and sometimes we get that and sometimes we don't. You know, I have some couples, some clients that are not receiving acceptance at all, and that's really hard. So, you know, the people that do accept and the people that do help and do invite, you know, people over for meals and do, you know, help incorporate more family time and, you know, do help a mother who's now single. You know, there's a lot of that where situations occur and the husband is no longer in the picture, and you know, the community does really try to get together and help in a lot of ways. So I think that that's really beautiful. Unfortunately, again, there's also the flip side of that where there are communities that shun people who get divorced, when again it could be 100% necessary for that couple. So that's something that I would love for us as a Jewish community to work on. But overall, I think that there's a lot of support and a lot of care given to people going through this, because it's a really, really big deal and it's a really big process and it's not easy at all, you know?
It's a great reminder what you're bringing up, because we hear so often about how the divorce rates are on the rise and how common it is in the world at large, and in our community how it's increasing a lot. And people usually talk about it in the context of kind of lamenting that, which I understand. But what I think you're bringing up, which is such a great reminder, just as a regular person or regular member of the community, it's a great reminder to think about, well, if we're saying that divorce rates are increasing so much, that means that there are so many more people who need that Shabbos meal invite, or
Yeah.
who might need a phone call to find out if their son, whose father's no longer living at home, wants to come to father-son learning with you,
Right.
or
Yeah.
something like that. Thinking about those situations proactively.
Yeah.
It just means that there's so many more of those situations that need our attention. It's
Yeah,
a great
absolutely.
reminder.
Yeah, and I had a client last night mention that, you know, a friend of hers posted a picture of just like her and her daughter's you know, menorah on Hanukkah. And she said like that really pulled at her heart because, you know, she's living with her family. So she has many menorahs on Hanukkah, which is so nice. She's divorced herself, but she was saying like the people that are so alone in this, you know, really it's our job to really help, you know, not every night invite them for Hanukkah, but you know, allow
Right.
them to come to parties and help invite them into the community, because fortunately or unfortunately our community is very couples based, you know, and um a lot of things and even a lot of mitzvahs are like when you're a couple, so being able to include people in that community and, include people that now were in the community and now kind of feel a little more isolated, like bringing them in is really, really important.
So important. Thank you. This has been
Yeah.
really, really
Thank you so
insightful and
much.
some
Yeah.
really, really helpful observations. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. So nice to speak to you.